You know that saying you can never have too much of a good thing? Well, let me just say, that's complete bullshit. Godzilla King of the Monsters is exactly that. Godzilla is a complete mess of a film. Sure, the acting is great and the CGI is spot on, but the story and writing is absolutely garbage. But that's nothing new in a monster movie. Just look at the Showa films or hell, even some Heisei movies. But what really bothers me is how much great stuff is put in here. I'm going to get into spoilers, so here's your warning. But let me just explain one scene to you. The big climactic fight scene. Godzilla and Mothra team up on Ghidorah and begin to fight. Then, out of nowhere, Rodan appears to even the odds for Ghidorah. Rodan takes the fight to Mothra while Godzilla faces his arch nemesis. Mothra is killed, sacrificing herself to save Godzilla from Ghidorah's gravity beams, like a kind of role reverse of GMK. Then Godzilla is revived and comes back as burning fucking Godzilla and uses a radiation pulse to pretty much snap Ghidorah out of existence. This is any G fan's wet dream. But when I saw it, I couldn't do anything but shrug. I like 2014 Godzilla. I think Edwards brought a great movie to light and created a new era. I also love the Showa and Heisei era films, and Final Wars is one of my favorite films in the series. But this is just too much. It's like going to an ice cream buffet, but rather than eating all you can, you need to eat everything. Imagine that. That's what this movie is. I think Michael Dougherty had an amazing vision that he tried to put to film. He put so much into this that it just feels like a drag. I think this film is a typical example of Hollywood trying to make something much more general. You know that scene I was just mentioning? Yeah. What if I told you that almost every 30 seconds of that scene, it just cuts to humans who are miles away from the action? We see Godzilla and Mothra tag Team Ghidorah for about a minute. Then boom, Millie Bobby Brown's parents looking for her. Those human scenes go on way too long. Look at something like Shin Gojira, or even the original Gojira. When Godzilla is given his time to shine, the focus is on him and the effect he is having. One of the most heart-wrenching scenes in the film Gojira is when a mother holds her 3 daughters and talks to them about how they'll soon see Daddy in heaven. That is one of the only times you see humans in Godzilla's rampage. In Shin Gojira, when Godzilla rampages, you see him and him alone. The movie doesn't constantly show you the humans so extensively, you miss the action. This works in 2014 because in 2014, this story was focused on the humans defeating the Mutos with a nuke, while Godzilla holds them off. When Godzilla is actually fighting, you see him fight, and don't see him throw one punch and then it comes back to the ground. Just take a look at what King of the Monsters does with a scene from 2014. This wouldn't be a problem if the drama was interesting or if it didn't happen constantly. If they did this with every other monster conflict leading up to Boston, I'd be fine with it. I respect 2014 for doing that and not showing us the brawls until the climax, which gives an orgasmic feeling to the audience. The next thing I'd like to talk about is how many goddamn monsters there are. 17. 17 fucking monsters, including the main 4, or 3, as it happens. More on that later. The movie tries to say that there is destruction all over the world that is devastating governments. Also, can I just rant about the whole monsters responding to an alpha and how it completely contradicts everything else in the Monsterverse? Especially how there's a goddamn Muto bowing down to Godzilla. Meanwhile, in 2014, the Mutos just wanted to kill Godzilla. The whole alpha aspect completely ruins the idea that these animals are in a established food chain. Godzilla eats Mutos, and Mutos feed off Godzilla corpses. If Godzilla is an alpha of a pack, then why do Mutos try to kill him if they are part of that pack? Anyways, rant aside, the alpha aspect is interesting, and the destruction would be wonderful, but there's so much of it that we don't care. Look at Shin Gojira. The destruction is huge, and it hits hard, and it is genuinely terrifying to an audience. There's so much destruction in King of the Monsters that I just don't care. Speaking about things that are inferior to their Japanese counterparts, the Big Four. Let's start with Rodan. Rodan is a complete bitch. He immediately gets the shit kicked out of him and then becomes Ghidorah's pet. This is such disservice to the character who should have been taken much more seriously. And right after Ghidorah disintegrates, Rodan just bows to Godzilla. He's really powerful, is extremely trigger happy seeing how quick he goes right for Ghidorah, and his design is badass. All this shown in the first minute of our introduction to him. Then he is instantly beaten by Ghidorah in a fight that should be extremely important, but instead it just cuts to humans trying to open a door. Then bam, the door opens and Rodan is already lost. This would be fine, like I said. Then they immediately make Rodan submit to Ghidorah. This character went from a trigger-happy, always looking for a fight badass, to a goddamn puppy in about 5 minutes. I really can't stand how they treat Rodan compared to the other big three. Mothra is awesome, but has her flaws. I'll get into that in a second. And Godzilla and Ghidorah are pretty much perfect. I personally think Rodan is so much cooler than Mothra. I mean, look, I have this Monster vs. Rodan toy right next to my bed on a desk. I'm not making this shit up, but that's just how much I like Rodan. The way they treated him makes me so annoyed, because this is probably the one monster that I was most excited to see in the movie. Dorothy talked Rodan up so much that I could not help but get my hopes up. Mothra was handled very well, but there is one thing I'd change. The Mothra Twins. In this movie, there's a device called the Orca, which is designed to communicate with kaiju. It works on all of them, even Ghidorah. What I would have done is have only the kaiju who doesn't respond to the Orca be Mothra. The only way to communicate with Mothra is with the Mothra Twins. This would work because Mothra is ancient and worshipped by the people, as established in the creation of the Temple of the Moth. Wouldn't it be great if the Mothra Twins were the only way of calming it, because they were the first people to discover it? Think about it. That opening Mothra scene, but instead of a few button presses to calm Mothra down, the twins come into the facility and sing the Mothra song to calm her down. Which, in this universe, it would have been an ancient ritual passed down only from the Mothra family bloodline. Make Mothra an actual goddess with rituals and prayers for her that only the twins can perform. I think that would give Mothra even more character, an unrelenting monster who becomes sympathetic when it is given a lullaby, like a baby, who cries until you play soft music before it becomes peaceful again. It would also give Mothra a reason to show up on Castle Bravo to lead Serizawa and his team to Godzilla. One of the twins is there with Serizawa, and could have called Mothra to lead them to Godzilla. Like I said before, Godzilla and Ghidorah are pretty much perfect, except for one thing. The Orca. The biggest fucking problem in the entire movie. The Orca, what I would do, is just get rid of the Orca completely. Ghidorah just wakes up on his own, and as a result, he causes the kaiju to feel uneasy. Godzilla goes to Antarctica to stop him, but Ghidorah gets away. Rodan tries to kill him, but is ultimately defeated, which leaves Ghidorah as a force only the combined mights of Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra to defeat. Mothra can still die, and Rodan can probably pull a Fire Rodan move and give Godzilla the energy he needs to become Burning Godzilla. After realizing that he can't defeat Ghidorah without a massive buff even the nuke can provide, Rodan is giving a touching and heartbreaking end as he gives all his energy into Godzilla. The magma that comes off of Rodan's wings seeps into Godzilla's skin, and the glow in Rodan's eyes begins to fade. The ending fight with Burning Godzilla and Ghidorah stays mostly the same, but Ghidorah is an actual effective foe. His gravity beams still affect Godzilla, and he can even take more than 2 blasts of the nuclear pulse. Godzilla eventually removes 2 of Ghidorah's heads, while the third melts away after trying to absorb the energy from burning Godzilla. With this plot I've set up, there's only one thing missing. Why the fuck would Serizawa nuke Godzilla if Godzilla never dies? This, my friend, is where I introduce the Oxygen Destroyer. This movie doesn't focus enough on characters, so here is where I'm going to finally flesh one out. Serizawa in 1941 was destroyed by the events of Hiroshima, which caused his father to disintegrate, while Serizawa and his mother were completely safe. I have a genuinely powerful scene where Serizawa searches the rubble of Hiroshima and finds his father's watch stuck on his time, and the body is completely gone, leaving Serizawa to know exactly what happened. Time passes, and Serizawa makes a breakthrough on a study of oxygen. He learns that oxygen can be liquefied or even dissolved. He believes that this can allow all new oxygen tanks that will allow divers to have scuba tanks the size of a coin. Have him test it in a fish tank like in the original Godzilla, and see the horrible sight of fish dissolving, which triggers memory of his father. Eventually, the military finds this and uses it to create a weapon, i.e. the missile scene in the movie, which they use the same way as they do in the actual movie. How the military got this weapon, that can be in multiple different ways. The one I prefer is that in 1954, Godzilla emerges on a small island, say Odo Island, and destroys it, which kills Serizawa's mother. So he approaches the U.S. military with his new oxygen breakthrough. The military originally shuts it down, but Serizawa still gives them his notes. They initially shut it down and resort to Operation Lucky Dragon, but they still keep the notes. Serizawa, after Godzilla's defeat, goes home and sees his father's watch and the fish tank. He remembers what he created and what he has just done. From there, he grows as a person and learns to value all life. Then bam, we cut to the Senate scene, and the movie pretty much goes the exact same way as I've already described, with Ghidorah waking up and all the monsters rising up individually as a response to Ghidorah throwing a balance at a whack. The orca is completely removed, and I think this would drastically improve the movie. Also, what I would do is give the final climactic scene a completely uninterrupted epic battle, which would probably make this one of the best Godzilla movies ever made. Thank you. This has been my discussion on why Godzilla, King of the Monsters, is too much of a good thing for its own good, and that brings it down extremely low. Personally, I'd say this movie is about a 6 out of 10. I prefer both Kong and Godzilla 2014 over it, and especially Shin Godzilla, I also prefer that over this. I was really looking forward to this movie, and this is just my review as someone who has been a fan of the franchise since I was, 6 years old, and these are my thoughts on Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you in another video. Thank you, and have a good night.